The grand hall of the Valthar Empire shone like a jewel in the heart of the capital planet, with walls made of crystalline panels that reflected the light of 1,000 floating lanterns. The air buzzed with the hum of celebration. Tonight the Empire was victorious. Tonight, the nobles feasted. Princess Larianne, the young daughter of Emperor Vorthon, sat on the dais, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Her golden eyes scanned the hall nervously, as always during these gatherings. While most aliens seemed at ease, she felt the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down on her shoulders. She had seen too many of these events end in political quarrels or secret betrayals, and then he arrived. The doors of the hall opened with a reverberating hum. A figure stepped inside. He was taller than any human she had seen in the holovids, but lean and muscular in a way that suggested he could move faster than he looked. His armor was battered in places, scratched and dented, yet polished to a dull gleam that made him stand out even more. The human warrior, Commander Elias Ward, had been invited as a guest of honor for his role in a recent victory, though few of the aliens truly welcomed him. Whispers rippled through the hall. "A human here? They say he fought 10 of our soldiers at once and survived. A DEATHWORLDer." Unpredictable as the chaos storms, Princess Larianne's heart skipped. She knew the stories too. She had seen the aftermath of human attacks in the holovids. Entire siege lines torn apart, ships obliterated, and soldiers who had never returned. And she had seen a human once in battle, close enough to feel the chill of fear in the pit of her stomach. Her father, Emperor Vorthon, gestured for silence. "Welcome, Commander Ward," he said, his deep voice echoing in the hall. "You fought bravely for the Empire's victory. Let tonight be a celebration of peace and friendship." Elias bowed slightly. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said in his calm, measured tone. He scanned the room slowly, eyes lingering on faces filled with curiosity, fear, and sometimes contempt. He did not bow to anyone else. He did not smile. He simply stood, a quiet, dangerous presence in the midst of laughter and music. Princess Larianne's hand trembled slightly. Her throat felt dry. When he turned his gaze toward her, she gasped, clutching her father's robe. "Not him, father," she cried, her voice ringing out over the hall. "I'm terrified of that human warrior." The hall fell silent. The music stopped. Every alien head turned toward her. Some gasped. Others murmured in disbelief. Even the Emperor's expression shifted, a flicker of concern crossing his otherwise stern features. Elias's face remained calm, unreadable. He did not take offense. He did not move. He simply tilted his head slightly, as if acknowledging the fear he inspired. "Princess Larianne," Emperor Vorthon said slowly, his voice cutting through the tension. "This human fought for the Empire. He is here as our guest. There is no cause for fear." The princess shook her head. "Father, you don't understand. I've seen what humans do in battle, and I have seen what Commander Ward can do. He doesn't fight like anyone else. He moves too fast, thinks too clearly, and never hesitates. I can't even imagine standing near him without being afraid." A ripple of murmurs ran through the nobles. Some chuckled nervously. Others looked at the human with newfound caution. The stories were true, they thought. He was a being unlike any they had ever encountered. Elias took a careful step forward. His armor made a soft clinking sound with each movement, but there was no aggression in his posture. He lowered his voice so only the princess could hear. "I don't enjoy killing, Princess," he said quietly. "I just make sure the fight ends. I do what I must so others can survive." Larianne stared at him, her fear battling with curiosity. There was a strange honesty in his tone, a weariness that she had never expected from a human warrior. Most humans in the holovids had seemed either reckless or cruel. Elias seemed different. The Emperor raised his hand, silencing the hall once more. "Commander Ward, sit with us tonight. Share the feast and the stories. Let all of us remember that courage takes many forms, and sometimes it comes from places we least expect." Elias nodded and moved to the dais, seating himself respectfully, but without ceremony. The nobles shifted uneasily. Some glanced at each other, wondering if their emperor had lost his mind. The presence of a human so close to the royal family was unheard of. Some had even suggested he be kept in a special distant guest hall, but the emperor would hear none of it. The feast began, dishes of exotic meats and fruits, glowing softly under the light of floating lanterns. Larian tried to focus on her meal, but her eyes kept drifting to Elias. She noticed the small scars on his hands, the faint tremor in his shoulders, and the way he scanned the room constantly, aware of every movement. This was a being trained to survive, to endure, to fight. A court musician played a string-like instrument, sending eerie, haunting notes across the hall. One of the nobles tried to make small talk with Elias, asking about human culture and battle techniques. He answered politely but tersely, never revealing more than necessary. Larian felt both fear and fascination. Every instinct in her body screamed to stay away, yet something about the human drew her in. He was unlike anyone she had met, unlike any alien she had ever seen. There was a strength in him, yes, but also a quiet restraint, a strange sense of honor. Later, when the feast ended and nobles began to leave for smaller chambers, the Emperor called for a private audience with Elias and the princess. Larian's heart raced. "Commander Ward," the Emperor said, "I want you to spend time with my daughter, not as a threat but as a protector. There are tensions rising across the Empire, and I trust your skill to keep her safe if needed." Larian's eyes widened in shock. She wanted to protest, but the words stuck in her throat. Fear mingled with something unfamiliar, anticipation. The thought of being near the human, even under protection, made her pulse quicken. Elias inclined his head. "It will be an honor, Princess. I will not harm you. That I promise." The princess could only nod, still trembling. She had spent her life in a palace where everything was controlled, where appearances mattered more than truth. Now, facing a human warrior, she realized how little she truly understood courage. As the doors of the audience chamber closed behind them, she caught one last glance of the hall, the laughter, the lights, the whispers. Outside, the galaxy was vast and dangerous. Inside, a human warrior sat quietly waiting. The palace corridors of the Valthar Empire were quieter than the Grand Hall had been. Floating lanterns glowed softly along the walls, casting long, shifting shadows. Princess Larian walked beside Commander Elias Ward, her steps light but nervous. She had spent years in these corridors, yet now every sound, the hum of the lights, the soft creak of the floor panels, made her heart race. Elias walked silently, his eyes scanning the passageways, noting each corner and shadow. To him, the palace was a potential battlefield. To Larian, it was home, and yet walking beside him made her feel exposed in a way she could not explain. "You are tense," Elias said quietly, not turning to look at her. "You should relax. The palace is not dangerous right now. I can't help it," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I've lived my life surrounded by walls and rules, and now, I don't know what to feel with you here. I'm supposed to trust a human warrior, someone I have heard can survive things no one else could." Elias stopped and faced her. The lantern light reflected off his armor, giving him an almost ethereal glow. "Princess, I do not ask you to trust me blindly. I only ask you to watch. Watch carefully and judge for yourself. That is the only way you will know the truth of any person, human or alien." She swallowed hard. His words were simple, yet they carried weight. He was not trying to charm her. He was not trying to impress. He was direct, honest, dangerous in a way she could not yet understand. As they turned a corner, a messenger ran toward them, panting. "Your Majesty, Princess Larian, there is trouble at the southern gate." Elias's eyes narrowed. "Explain." The messenger's voice trembled. "A group of insurgents, unknown species. They are attacking! The gate's defenses are faltering. They have weapons that the guards cannot match." Larian's heart pounded. The southern gate was one of the palace's most secure areas. If it fell, the enemy could reach the inner sanctum where the Emperor and royal family were. Elias's jaw tightened. "Take me there." The princess hesitated. I should stay here." The Emperor. "You will stay behind if you must," Elias said, his tone firm. "But if I am to protect you, I need to understand the threat. I need to see what we are facing." With a nod from the princess, they ran through the corridors faster than she thought possible. Guards and servants hurried aside, recognizing the human warrior who inspired both fear and awe. When they reached the southern gate, chaos reigned. Smoke drifted through the air, blending with the shimmering light of alien energy shields. Alien soldiers fought desperately against strange creatures, their bodies tall and twisted, weapons spitting fire that scorched the ground. Larian's stomach twisted. She had never seen death so close, so raw. Elias did not hesitate. With a sudden burst of speed, he leapt forward, his movements precise and controlled. One moment he was behind a shattered pillar. The next he had disarmed a creature and used its own weapon against it. Guards who had been struggling watched in awe as he moved like a shadow, striking, dodging, and controlling the flow of the fight with calculated skill. "Princess." "Step back," Elias shouted over the din. "Stay behind me." She wanted to argue, wanted to insist she could help, but the fear in her chest rooted her to the spot. From this distance she could see him clearly, every motion fluid, every strike deliberate. There was no hesitation, no wasted energy. It was as if the chaos obeyed him. A twisted creature lunged at her, and without thinking she ducked behind a pillar. Her pulse raced. Her mind spun, and then she saw him again. Elias had intercepted another attacker, tossing it aside like it weighed nothing. His armor was scratched, his face smeared with dust, yet he did not falter. Larian's fear began to change. She realized that this human was not terrifying because he enjoyed violence, but because he understood it so clearly. Every movement he made was calculated to save lives, to end the fight as quickly as possible. The realization both frightened and fascinated her. The battle lasted only minutes, yet it felt like hours to Larian. When the last insurgent fell, silence returned to the gate. The soldiers stood in awe, some trembling, others silent in shock. Elias turned to the princess, his chest heaving slightly, eyes still sharp. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice calm despite the battle around them. She nodded, unable to speak. Her legs felt weak, but her mind was alert. For the first time, she truly understood the stories about humans. They were not merely survivors. They were relentless, focused, and fearless in ways no alien could fully comprehend. A guard stepped forward, bowing. "Commander Ward, your actions saved the gate. The Emperor himself will hear of this immediately." Elias nodded but did not seek praise. Instead, he helped Larian step back toward the inner palace. "Stay close," he said. "Danger can come from places you do not expect." The walk back was quiet. Larian struggled to find words. Finally, she whispered, I have always feared humans, but I think I may have misunderstood." Elias glanced at her, expression unreadable. "Fear is natural. It keeps you alive. But understanding transforms fear into respect, and sometimes into trust." For the rest of the evening, the princess remained at his side. Guards whispered among themselves, amazed that the human warrior had saved the palace so decisively. Nobles who had once mocked humanity now regarded Elias with careful attention, some even bowing slightly as he passed. Later, in the quiet of her chambers, Larian stared out of the tall windows at the twin moons of the capital planet. The city below sparkled with lights, unaware of the danger that had nearly breached its gates. Her thoughts returned to the human warrior. He was nothing like the stories she had been told. He did not revel in power, nor did he seek glory. He acted with precision, with purpose, with honor, and though fear still lingered, curiosity began to take its place. The next morning, the palace was alive with rumors. Some spoke of Elias as a hero. Others whispered that humans were too dangerous to be trusted. But one thing was clear. Princess Larian could not ignore him no matter how much she tried. That afternoon she found herself walking beside him again, this time through the gardens of the palace. The flowers glowed faintly in the alien sunlight, their petals shimmering in colors humans could not name. Elias walked silently, observing the surroundings as if expecting danger to emerge from the beauty itself. "Do you think this palace is safe now?" she asked. "Safe is relative," he replied. "Nothing in this galaxy is truly safe. But we can make it safer, one decision at a time." She considered his words. The simplicity of his perspective, the clarity, was unlike anything she had heard from her advisors or teachers. They always spoke in riddles, in politics, and half-truths. Elias spoke plainly, yet each word carried weight. Suddenly, a shout echoed through the gardens. Larian and Elias turned to see a group of palace guards chasing a figure dressed in dark clothing. The figure slipped past them, moving with unnatural speed. Alarm bells rang throughout the gardens. Elias's eyes narrowed. "Another threat," he muttered. Without hesitation, he sprinted forward, moving faster than the eye could follow. Larian tried to keep up but stumbled over the uneven terrain. From a distance, she watched as Elias confronted the intruder. The fight was brief but intense. Elias did not strike without purpose. Each movement was designed to end the threat quickly, to minimize harm. When it was over, the intruder lay unconscious and Elias stood over him, breathing steadily as if nothing had happened. Larian approached him slowly. How do you do that?" she asked, awe in her voice. Elias looked at her, expression calm. "I pay attention. I anticipate, and I accept the responsibility of the consequences. That is all any warrior can do." For the first time, the princess realized that her fear of humans was not about their strength alone. It was about their clarity, their willingness to face danger without hesitation. And now, that fear was changing into something more complicated, something that included respect, fascination, and even trust. As the sun set over the capital planet, casting long shadows over the palace walls, Princess Larian understood one thing clearly. Her life was no longer hers alone. A human warrior had entered it, and nothing would ever be the same. The following morning, the palace buzzed with unusual energy. Courtiers whispered in hushed tones, their faces tense, their eyes darting toward the dais where Emperor Vorthon held court. Word of the previous day's insurgent attack had spread quickly, and while the palace had been saved, the danger was far from over. Princess Larian sat beside her father, her posture stiff. She could feel the eyes of the nobles on her, and though she tried to ignore them, one glance at Commander Elias Ward reminded her of the reality that had changed everything. He was seated slightly apart, quiet, his presence commanding attention without effort. "Commander Ward," the Emperor began, his deep voice echoing through the hall. "Yesterday you saved the palace, its citizens, and my daughter. For that you have my gratitude. But I fear that our enemies will not rest. Tell me, what do you advise?" Elias rose smoothly, his armor making a soft clink. He looked around the room, studying the nobles, noting their unease. "Your Majesty," he said, voice calm yet firm, "these attacks are not random. They are coordinated. Someone within the Empire has given our enemies the advantage. To protect the princess and the throne, we must uncover this traitor before they strike again." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Accusations hung unspoken in the air. Many of the nobles shifted uncomfortably, realizing that a human was telling them how to manage palace security. Some bristled at the idea, but even the bravest could not deny his skill and experience. Princess Larian's heart pounded. The human spoke with authority, yet without arrogance. He did not seek to dominate, only to act efficiently and wisely. Something about that unsettled her. "Commander Ward is correct," the Emperor said finally. "We must act quickly. But tell me, what of the princess? Can she remain safe if we pursue this traitor?" Elias turned to Larian. "You must stay close to me. Trust your instincts and follow orders without hesitation. If you do, you will be safe." Larian swallowed hard. She wanted to argue, to assert herself as a princess, but deep inside she knew the truth. She had never seen anyone move with the confidence and awareness that Elias did. He was not just skilled. He was nearly unbeatable when he had a purpose. The palace guards began to mobilize under his guidance. He inspected the gates, the walls, and the corridors, noting weaknesses the Emperor had never noticed. When he walked through the halls, soldiers whispered, "Move aside. He knows what he is doing." Despite her fear, Larian followed him. She watched how he communicated with the guards, a combination of respect, authority, and careful instruction. She realized that humans could inspire loyalty in ways the Valthar Empire had never considered. Later, when the morning sun reached its peak, Elias led the princess and a select group of guards to the southern observation tower. From there, they could survey the city below and the palace grounds. The wind blew lightly, rustling Larian's long hair. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, to imagine a world where danger could be met and survived. "You understand what we face?" Elias asked, eyes scanning the horizon. "I think so," she admitted. "Someone inside the palace gave our enemies information." "But it's why?" "Power," he said simply. "Greed, fear, jealousy. The same things that destroy empires across the galaxy. We cannot let it continue." Suddenly, the quiet was broken by an alarm. Red lights flashed along the walls. Soldiers rushed past them, weapons ready. Larian's stomach twisted. "They are attacking again," a guard shouted. "This time the northern wall is under siege." Elias's eyes narrowed. "Then we move. Princess, stay behind me and do exactly as I say. Do not act alone." The ride to the northern wall was tense. Larian clung to the handrail of the hover platform, her knuckles white. Around her, the palace guards moved swiftly, yet with caution. Elias stood at the edge of the platform, scanning the battlefield below with sharp, calculating eyes. When they reached the northern wall, chaos erupted. Alien soldiers fought desperately against a group of shadowy attackers. Their weapons advanced and deadly. Larian gasped. The attackers moved with precision, their coordination suggesting more than mere mercenaries. They were trained, experienced, and dangerous. Without hesitation, Elias leapt forward. Larian watched in awe as he moved through the battlefield like a force of nature. His armor protected him, but he relied on his instincts and skill far more than on his equipment. Each strike was deliberate, each movement calculated. He did not waste energy. He did not hesitate. The princess had never seen anything like it. Soldiers who had been faltering regained confidence when he appeared among them. The attackers, once bold and relentless, hesitated, then faltered. The tide of battle shifted in an instant. At one point, a shadowy figure lunged at Larian, thinking she would be an easy target. But Elias intercepted it mid-strike, knocking it away with a speed that made her heart leap. For the first time, she realized that her fear of humans was not about their strength alone. It was about their awareness, their precision, and their willingness to act when others hesitated. When the battle ended, the attackers were either captured or had retreated. The northern wall was secure once more. Soldiers cheered, but Elias did not join in. He simply looked at the princess, expression calm, as if reminding her that victory was never final. "You are safe," he said softly, "for now." Larian nodded, but she could not speak. Her mind was racing, filled with both fear and admiration. The human warrior had once again proven that he was unlike anyone she had ever known. As the sun set over the palace, painting the crystalline walls with streaks of orange and red, the Emperor called another council. This time it was private, with only a few trusted advisors present. "We cannot ignore this," the Emperor said. "Our enemies are bold and our own walls are threatened from within. Commander Ward, what do you suggest?" Elias spoke without hesitation. "We must identify the traitor. Use intelligence, surveillance, and questioning. Move quickly or they will strike again. And the princess must be protected at all costs. She is the key to both the Empire and morale. We cannot risk her life for politics," one of the nobles scoffed. "A human advising the Emperor? Who gave him such authority?" Elias's eyes locked on the noble. "I am not here to take authority. I am here to ensure survival. If the palace falls because of arrogance, no rank will save it." The room fell silent. Even those who disliked him could not deny the truth of his words. Later that evening, Larian returned to her chambers. She moved quietly, reflecting on the events of the day. For hours, she stared out at the moons above, thinking of the human warrior who had saved her world twice already. She did not understand him completely, nor did she expect to. But one thought kept returning to her mind. Humans were dangerous, yes, but they were also extraordinary. A soft knock on her door startled her. Elias entered without waiting for an invitation, his expression neutral but his eyes attentive. "Princess," he said, "I need you to remain vigilant. There are forces still at work within the palace. You cannot let your guard down even for a moment." "I understand," she said, her voice steady despite the flutter of fear in her chest. "But why do you stay so calm? You face danger every day, yet you do not hesitate." Elias studied her, then spoke carefully. "Because fear alone does not save lives. Only action does. You cannot fight the future with hesitation. You must see it clearly and then act." Larian nodded slowly, absorbing his words. She realized that she was beginning to understand the human perspective, the clarity, the focus, the courage that did not seek glory but demanded responsibility. For the rest of the night, they worked together, reviewing patrol routes, analyzing possible entry points and planning responses to any new threats. Larian began to see the human not just as a warrior but as a guide, a protector, and perhaps something more. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, she looked at Elias and realized something she could not have imagined before. She no longer feared him in the same way. The terror had shifted into respect, curiosity, and a quiet trust she had never given to anyone in her life. The galaxy outside the palace remained dangerous, filled with enemies both known and unknown. But within the walls, a new understanding had formed, between a princess and a human warrior who moved like a shadow, acted like a storm, and thought with the clarity of someone who had faced death and survived. The palace was quiet after the long night, but the silence felt heavy, not peaceful. The lights along the grand corridors flickered as if the building itself sensed the tension in the air. Guards moved in pairs now, their eyes scanning every shadow. Everyone knew the enemy was no longer just outside the walls. Someone inside the palace was working with them. Princess Larian sat in the royal council chamber beside her father. The emperor looked older than usual. His silver markings, which symbolized his power, seemed dim. Around him stood a small circle of nobles, some loyal, some doubtful, and all afraid. Commander Elias Ward stood a few steps behind the emperor, silent but watchful, like a sentinel carved from steel. "The attacks are getting closer," said one of the nobles nervously. "The enemy knows our defenses too well. There must be a leak." Elias spoke calmly. "There is a leak, and whoever it is, they know your systems better than most generals would. That means someone high-ranking is passing them information." The nobles exchanged worried glances. Larian could see their fear and their guilt. Some of them did know secrets they shouldn't. Others were simply terrified of being accused. The emperor leaned forward. "Commander, do you have proof?" "Not yet," Elias said. "But we have a pattern. The enemy strikes where the guards have been reassigned. Someone inside this chamber has been altering patrol routes." Larian's eyes widened. That meant the traitor could be here, in this very room. Elias continued. "We need to test loyalty, quietly. If we reveal what we know, the traitor will vanish before we find them." The emperor nodded slowly. "Do what you must, Commander. I trust your judgment." The nobles began whispering as Elias left the chamber with Larian. When the doors closed, she looked at him anxiously. "Do you really think the traitor is one of them?" "I don't think," he replied. "I know." They walked together down the long corridor leading to the strategy room. Elias's boots made soft thuds against the polished floor, each step echoing in the silence. "We'll set a trap," he said. "We'll leak false information and see who acts on it." Larian frowned. "That sounds dangerous." "It is," he admitted. "But it's the only way to find the truth." That evening, Elias put his plan into motion. He told the council that a valuable transport carrying secret technology would arrive at the western gate. In reality, there was no such transport. It was bait. Larian volunteered to help. "I want to be part of this," she said. "This is my home too. I can't just hide behind you forever." Elias hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Then stay close. You'll follow my lead no matter what happens." Hours passed. The palace lights dimmed as night settled in. From a high balcony, Elias and Larian watched the western gate. Guards moved quietly in position, pretending to prepare for the false transport. Then movement. A small figure slipped through the shadows near the control panel. Larian held her breath. Elias's eyes narrowed. He recognized the outline of the intruder's armor. "It's one of the Emperor's own advisors," Elias murmured. "The traitor." He motioned for silence, moving swiftly but silently down the stairs, his footsteps soundless despite the metal floor. Larian followed carefully, her heart racing. The intruder tapped a series of commands into the control console. Suddenly, the defensive barrier at the gate shimmered, flickering as if it were failing. That was the signal the enemies were waiting for. They were going to attack again. Elias didn't wait. In one swift motion, he grabbed the traitor's arm and slammed him against the wall. The alien struggled, eyes wide in fear. "Who are you signaling?" Elias demanded. The traitor hissed. "You humans think you can protect this empire? You're just beasts with weapons. The Valthar should rule without your kind." Larian gasped. "You betrayed us out of pride?" The alien sneered. "Humans are a disease. You let them into our halls and now they infect everything, even the royal bloodline." Before Elias could speak again, the sound of explosions echoed in the distance. The traitor had already sent the signal. The enemy was coming. Elias shoved the traitor toward the guards who had arrived. "Lock him up," he ordered sharply. "Now!" He turned to Larian. "We need to get to the Emperor. They'll strike at the throne room next." They ran through the corridors as alarms blared. The palace shook under the assault of plasma fire from outside. Servants scattered, guards took defensive positions, and the great crystal walls trembled with the impact of explosions. "Stay behind me," Elias shouted as they turned a corner, just in time to see a squad of attackers breach the lower hall. He raised his weapon, firing short, precise bursts. Every shot hit its mark. The alien attackers fell one by one, their weapons clattering to the floor. Larian ducked behind a pillar, covering her ears against the noise. When the last enemy fell, Elias reloaded calmly, scanning the corridor for more. "Move," he said, motioning her forward. They reached the throne room doors, but they were already open. Smoke filled the air. Inside, the Emperor stood surrounded by guards, his energy shield flickering under enemy fire. The attackers were pressing forward, trying to reach him. Elias didn't hesitate. He charged into the room like a thunderstorm. His armor absorbed the first blast as he dove into cover and returned fire. Larianne stayed low, crawling behind the steps of the dais. "Father," she cried. The Emperor looked up briefly, his face grim but determined. "Stay back, Larianne." Elias moved like lightning. He threw one attacker into another, disarmed a third, and blocked a strike aimed at the Emperor. For a moment it looked like he might actually win, but there were too many of them. The enemy's numbers kept increasing. Then one of the attackers drew a plasma grenade. Larianne saw it first, a glowing blue sphere rolling across the floor toward her father. "Father." "Look out!" she screamed. Without thinking, Elias sprinted forward and threw himself between the Emperor and the grenade. The explosion hit him full on, throwing him across the room. The shockwave shattered the floor panels. Larianne's scream echoed through the hall. "Elias!" When the smoke cleared, the human warrior was on one knee, armor cracked and smoking, but somehow still alive. His body shook with pain, yet he lifted his weapon and fired again, forcing the remaining attackers to retreat. Guards rushed in, surrounding the Emperor and sealing the room. The battle was over for now. Larianne ran to Elias's side, kneeling beside him. His armor was scorched, his face pale. "You're hurt," she said softly. "I've been worse," he muttered with a faint smile. "Your father's safe. That's what matters." The Emperor approached, his expression heavy with both gratitude and guilt. "You have saved my life twice now, human. I owe you more than words can say." Elias looked up at him. "Then don't waste what I've protected. The traitor is caught, but the war is not over. The enemies outside will come again and harder." Vorthan nodded slowly. "You speak truth, Commander. I see now why your people are both feared and respected. You act where others hesitate." Larianne's heart pounded as she looked between the two men. One her father, the ruler of an empire, and the other a soldier from a world the galaxy mocked. And yet, in that moment, she knew who had truly protected them all. Elias began to sway, exhaustion finally claiming him. Larianne caught his arm before he fell completely. "You need rest," she said firmly. He gave her a weak smile. "Later, I'll rest when the palace is safe." But even as he said it, his strength faded. His body finally gave in and he collapsed unconscious. Hours later, Elias lay in the medical wing. The Emperor stood beside his bed, silent, deep in thought. Around him, medics worked carefully to stabilize the human. Princess Larianne sat at his bedside, her hands folded in her lap. She watched his chest rise and fall with each steady breath. The fear she had once felt for him was gone now, replaced by something new, admiration and a strange warmth she couldn't name. Her father broke the silence. "He risked everything for us. For you," she nodded slowly. "He didn't have to. But he did anyway." The Emperor looked at her thoughtfully. "Perhaps that is what makes humanity so dangerous and so valuable. They do not fight only for themselves. They fight for what they believe in." Larianne looked at Elias's face. Even in sleep he looked calm, like a warrior who had made peace with his battles. "I was wrong about him," she whispered. "He's not terrifying because of what he can do. He's terrifying because he chooses when to use it." Her father placed a hand on her shoulder. "Rest, daughter. When he wakes, we will decide what comes next. The galaxy will know what happened here, and they will remember the human who stood against an army to protect an empire not his own." Larianne nodded, but she did not leave his side. Outside, the palace lights flickered again as dawn rose. For the first time in many days, she felt a fragile sense of safety. She looked at the human warrior lying before her, the man she had once feared so deeply, and whispered softly, "You've changed everything, Elias Ward." The palace was quiet. The battle had ended, the intruders defeated, and the traitor locked away. Outside, the sun rose over the Valthar capital, painting the crystalline walls with golden light. But inside, the halls were still tense. The memory of the attack lingered. Princess Larianne sat beside Commander Elias Ward's bed in the medical wing. He had been unconscious for hours, his breathing steady but shallow. Machines beeped softly, measuring his vitals. The human warrior who had terrified her just days ago now lay fragile and vulnerable, and a new feeling swelled in her chest. Concern, admiration, and gratitude all tangled together. Why do humans do this? She whispered to herself, barely moving her lips. Why risk everything for those who do not even belong to your world? She did not need an answer yet. She only needed him to wake up. The door opened quietly and Emperor Vorthon entered. His expression was solemn, but a trace of relief shone in his eyes. He is alive, the Emperor said softly, as if speaking aloud might break the fragile calm. Your fears, my daughter, they were never of his strength alone. You feared what you did not understand, and now perhaps you see the truth. Larian nodded. He is extraordinary, not just in battle, but in everything he does. He fights not for glory, not for power, but for people, for us. The Emperor studied her, and then, surprisingly, he smiled faintly. Perhaps humanity has much to teach us. Perhaps they are not merely survivors, but something more, something vital. And Commander Ward has proven it. Hours later, Elias stirred. His eyes flickered open, first to the ceiling, then to the soft light of the room. He blinked, slowly realizing he was in a medical bed. Machines hummed around him, and the scent of antiseptic filled the air. A soft voice called from the side. You're awake. Elias turned his head. Princess Larian knelt beside him, her golden eyes wide but gentle. Relief flooded her face. You made it, she said softly. He managed a faint smile, his voice hoarse but steady. Of course. You think a human warrior would fail when the Empire depends on him? She laughed softly, a mixture of joy and disbelief. I thought I was afraid of you, but now I realize I should have never feared you in the first place. Fear is natural, Elias said, trying to sit up slightly. It keeps people alive. Understanding, that's what matters most. She reached out and took his hand gently. I understand now, and I trust you. For a moment, silence filled the room, a peaceful, fragile silence. Outside, the city buzzed back to life. Soldiers repaired walls, nobles whispered of the human who had changed everything, and the palace, though still scarred, stood firm. The Emperor entered the room, flanked by his advisors. Commander Ward, he began formally, you have saved the Valthar Empire twice, not by luck, not by chance, but by skill, courage, and honor. For that, we grant you the highest recognition our empire can bestow. Elias's brow furrowed. I do not seek honor, your majesty. I fight because it is necessary, not for titles or praise. Then accept it for what it is, the Emperor said. Recognition. For the people you have protected. For the courage you have shown. The advisors bowed deeply. Even those who had doubted humanity now respected him openly. Larian watched quietly, her chest swelling with pride and relief. Elias nodded slowly, allowing himself a rare moment of humility. I accept, he said. Not for myself, but for those who could not defend themselves. Days passed. The palace slowly returned to its routines. Guards were retrained, patrols strengthened, and the council worked carefully to ensure no future betrayal could occur. Yet the atmosphere had changed. Nobles who once mocked humans now watched Elias with quiet respect. Soldiers spoke of his tactics in hushed reverence, and Princess Larian, she found herself thinking of him constantly. One afternoon, she found him in the palace gardens walking quietly among glowing alien flora. He moved with calm awareness, scanning the gardens with practiced eyes. She approached, her steps hesitant but steady. Princess, he said softly, noticing her immediately. You should not be wandering alone. The gardens are beautiful but not always safe. I'm not afraid anymore, she replied, walking beside him. Not of you, not of what you can do. I've learned something. Elias glanced at her, curious. And what is that? That humans are more than the galaxy believes, she said, her voice firm. You are dangerous, yes, but in a way that protects rather than destroys. You fight because it matters, not because you seek power. I admire that, he smiled faintly. That is very kind, Princess. But the galaxy will not change its mind easily. Many will fear humans for centuries, long after we are gone. She shook her head. Maybe, but not here. Not anymore. You've changed my world, and perhaps one day the galaxy will see it too. A week later, the Emperor held a grand ceremony in the palace's central hall. Humans and aliens alike gathered. A rare unity forming among species who had once feared each other. Elias stood beside the Emperor, silent and strong. Larian sat on the dais, her eyes bright as she watched him receive honors not for conquest, but for courage and integrity. The Emperor's voice echoed across the hall. Let all who witness this know, humanity is not merely a species to be feared. It is a species to be respected, for they possess strength, intelligence, and honor beyond measure, and Commander Elias Ward stands as the embodiment of these virtues. Applause erupted, echoing through the crystalline hall. For the first time, humans were not outsiders, not anomalies, but equals in the eyes of the Valthar Empire. Larian felt a surge of pride. Not only had Elias proven himself in battle, but he had also proven the worth of his entire species. She stood when he turned toward her, bowing slightly in respect, not to a princess, but to someone who had grown to understand his sacrifices and his honor. You've changed everything, she whispered again, almost to herself. I've only done what any human would do, Elias said quietly, but thank you, princess, for believing, for understanding, and for trusting me. For a long moment, they simply stood there, two beings from different worlds connected by courage, trust, and an unspoken bond that had formed in the fires of battle. Outside, the city gleamed under the twin suns. The palace walls, once scarred by attacks, now reflected light brighter than ever. The people of the Empire whispered tales of the human warrior who had protected a princess, saved an emperor, and stood against betrayal and chaos alike. And somewhere deep within the palace, Larian knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was vast and dangerous, but humanity, fearless, relentless, honorable, had shown that even the smallest world could change the course of history. As Elias and Larian walked together through the gardens, side by side, she realized something she had never thought possible. Fear had transformed into respect. Respect had transformed into trust, and trust, perhaps into something more. The galaxy would remember this day. It would remember the human who stood against impossible odds. It would remember humanity's honor.